Hi there, I am Monica Burns, and welcome to the new Easy EdTech podcast episode. As a former New York City public school teacher and current EdTech consultant, I started this podcast in 2019 to share my favorite classroom tech integration tips and stories from my experiences. Each episode offers practical ideas for you to try, share, or save for later. Be sure to check out classtechtips.com/podcast for today's show notes and resources. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or another favorite podcast app, you'll find the show notes link in the description too. This episode is sponsored by the free stuff section of my website. Did you know that there is a page on my site full of free stuff and favorites? You can find weekly planner pages for educators, 60 plus time-saving prompts to use with ChatGPT, graphic organizers for students, and lots more. You can find the free stuff section on my website by going to classtechtips.com and clicking the free stuff button at the top of the page. That's classtechtips.com. Today's episode is all about fall activity ideas. And fall is one of my favorite times of year. I am not a pumpkin spice person. I feel like I should lower my voice when I say that, but I do love this season. I was born and raised in New York, so fall is very much a season that happens here. And I love apple pie, apple cider donuts, basically any baked good that you can add apples to, I am a big fan of. And today, as we talk about fall activities here on the podcast, I have some favorites for you that take a digital spin. These are ready for you to customize for your students and incorporate the fall season into your classroom or any of the work that you do. Now, this episode will go live in August, so a little bit before the fall season officially starts. But I wanted to get this to you sooner than later in case your wheels were spinning about fall. And I will also have a post on the blog a little bit later. So in September is probably when it's going to be. That includes some fall bulletin board ideas with QR codes. So if you love the activity ideas, you try any of them out with students, you might want to feature them on a bulletin board. So stay tuned for that. It'll come up a little bit later in this season. So fall is a great time of year to try a tech-friendly activity with students. And not only is it a season that is a favorite of mine, but it also is a fresh start. You know, that beginning of the school year, whether the leaves change by you or not, right, can feel like a fresh start. So from the changes in the leaves to festivals and celebrations in different parts of the world, there's a lot of topics you can link to subjects such as math, science, social studies, and ELA that connect to this season. So I've got a selection of fall activities for kids for you to explore, and you can tailor them to the needs of your students. Now, I couldn't help myself if I wasn't making an artificial intelligence or AI connection to this seasonal podcast episode. I actually just put up a new page this month on my blog. So at the very top, you can click on artificial intelligence resources. That has my free ebook and a bunch of other things to explore. So very front of mind. But on the list that I'm going to share with you in today's episode, there's a handful of very general activities. And I know that you're going to want to tailor them to your group of students. And if you're a fan of generative AI, like I am, you might want to consider taking the ideas I share with you today and pairing them with ChatGPT. You can actually type in or summarize the activity idea that I share. I'm also going to put the show notes up for this, so you could always copy and paste it. I guess that would work too. And you can ask ChatGPT or Bard or Microsoft Bing or another favorite tool to connect that activity to a specific goal you have. So for example, when I tell you about virtual fall scavenger hunts in a moment, you might put that into ChatGPT and say, connect this activity to, and then put in a specific ELA skill, like compare and contrast. Or you might say, customize this activity for, and then put in a group of fourth grade students, or suggest ways to make this activity doable on Chromebooks. So I share that at the top of this episode because I know that sometimes when I give big ideas, you're going to want to make them your own. And you might find that using a chatbot or AI like ChatGPT can help speed up that customization process. So let's jump into this list of fall activity ideas that have a digital twist. The first one, I gave you a hint already, is a virtual fall scavenger hunt. You could use a portable device like an iPad or a tablet to conduct a virtual fall-themed scavenger hunt in your classroom. Now, for this fall activity, students can explore a virtual forest or a park, or identify items associated with the season, like leaves, acorns, and animals. And you can use a platform like 360 Cities or Google Arts and Culture for students to locate fall scenes virtually. Maybe you even connect those links to a unique QR code, or you might have students out and about with their devices, especially if they're a portable device like an iPad or tablet, and ask them to snap pictures of certain fall-themed items that either you've placed somewhere for them to find or you know are going to be easy for them to find in a particular space. If you're new to using QR codes, I'll add a link to the show notes with a step-by-step guide that will help you follow steps to place QR codes on a poster. So just know that that's there for you too. Our next activity is a weather prediction. And you might have students review some fall weather patterns, something that happens in September, October, November, and access data from a website like weather.com or another weather service resource. And students could use their Chromebooks or really any device that lets them open up a web browser to find this information. So you might ask students to review historical data on the weather for a specific time and place, and then predict what the weather might look like in different parts of the world based on their research. So in a math classroom, you might even ask students to use the data that they locate to find temperature averages over a period of time. You could really customize this for your group. And if weather prediction seems like a fun idea, but you want something a little bit different, you might even try a fall weather guessing game where you give data sets to students and ask them to review that data and guess where in the world this might be. Our next activity is creating fall-themed artwork. You can ask students to open up an illustration app on a device, maybe it's their iPad, to create a digital art with fall themes. You can ask students that are studying geometry topics to incorporate specific shapes into their creation, for example. And there's lots of apps students can access on their iPad as part of a fall activity for kids. Even if you've done some sketchnoting in the past, those are some great ones to start with. You might also find that your students are already in an app, maybe one that has auto draw, which is another AI connection, where they can do their best to draw a pumpkin and then it will pop a pumpkin like clip art onto their page. So far, we have virtual fall scavenger hunt, a weather prediction or guessing game, and creating some fall-themed artwork. Next up is a historical harvest festival exploration. And in a social studies classroom, you might have students research and share information on different harvest festivals. Kids can explore historical ones from different cultures, different parts of the world. And this is also a great opportunity for a cross-curricular connection. So you might ask students to do a close reading of a primary source document, or you might use a graphic organizer like a Venn diagram to compare and contrast different festivals. I did a post in partnership with the folks at Book Creator all about their new graphic organizers. I'll link out to that here for you too. That's another great resource. Canva lets you make graphic organizers, including Venn diagrams. So that would be a nice connection for any research students do around a historical harvest festival. Next up is a multimedia story writing. And whether your kids are on Chromebooks or laptops, you might want them to create a fall-themed story. They can use interactive tools. Maybe it's Adobe Express. I love all things Adobe. I've done some work with their team too. Or maybe have them use Seesaw or Book Creator to record their voice alongside the text that they add to their page. So you might also have students create a fall comic using one of those tools, Or I've got some free comic templates on my free stuff page, so you can find them there. That might be something you want to try out this fall. If you are going on any excursions in the next few months, you might want students to participate in a fall field trip recap. Now, I love how easy it's become to incorporate green screen technology into the work that you do with students. And if your students have taken part or will take part in a field trip this fall, have them snap pictures during the field trip. Then they can upload it to the background of a video using a tool like Flip. And if you don't want them to take pictures during the field trip, you might take a selection, maybe 5 or 10 yourself, and then give them in a folder for students to pick from. And then they can choose the one they want to add to a tool like Flipgrid. And students can record themselves in front of that photograph and create a video that recaps the field trip. A great way for them to have an in-person experience as well as a digital experience. Now, last up in this quick episode is a fall poetry creation. Now, I'm a big fan of having students create something that is shareable, even if it's small. And you might have students create poems related to fall themes. This could be in any style. And if they choose something that's a little short, like a short on text, I don't necessarily mean it's not hard, right? But just short on text. They could, like a haiku, for example, you might have them take that short piece of text and turn it into a graphic using a graphic design tool. I'm a big fan, like I mentioned, of Adobe Express, and there's a new version of Adobe Express that even has a generative AI connection. If you haven't tried it out yet, it incorporates what you might have seen in Adobe Firefly right into the creativity tool. So here's just a handful for you to choose from. Remember, you might customize these using a chatbot by saying a skill or a special strategy you want to incorporate into one of these activities. And I would love to see what you make. So if you decide to try any of these out in your classroom, or if you have another techie fall themed activity that you think other people should know about, feel free to send a message my way. You can tag me in your Twitter or your threads or your Instagram post. You can send me a message on one of those platforms and let me know all about your fall themed activities. So let's finish up this episode like we always do with a few ways to make this EdTech easy. Choose a fall themed project. Customize it for your students. Use AI to tailor the experience to your group. Share student work, maybe on a bulletin board. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. Remember, you can find the show notes by going to classtechtips.com/podcast and finding today's episode. Today's episode is number 230. This episode is sponsored by the free stuff section of my website. Did you know that there is a page on my site full of free stuff and favorites? You can find weekly planner pages for educators, 60+ time-saving prompts to use with ChatGPT, graphic organizers for students, and lots more. You can find the free stuff section on my website by going to classtechtips.com and clicking the free stuff button at the top of the page. That's classtechtips.com. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday edition of the Easy EdTech podcast. Remember to hit follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite app to have next week's episode ready for you on Tuesday morning. Feel free to share takeaways from this episode with friends or colleagues in a quick email or text, or even on social media. And don't hesitate to tag me at Class Tech Tips if you have any questions.